In the run-up to their World Championship match in Dubai at the end of November, I'm looking at previous encounters between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Magnus Carlsen. I've already looked at 2 games from junior tournaments, and what I want to do now is show you their first game played as adults. They'd played a couple of Blitz games in 2010, but this game, played at the Tata Steel tournament in 2011, was, the first, let's say, serious classical encounter between the two as grown-ups. By this stage, Carlsen was already rated #1 in the world at the beginning of 2011. So he'd obviously, outstripped Nepo in terms of development. But Nepo hadn't been doing too badly. You can see, okay, his rating here is 27.33 compared to Carlsen's 28.14. However, Nepo in 2010 had won the European Individual Championship, and later in the same year, he'd won the Russian Championship. So that shows that Nepo was doing pretty well himself. So at this stage, this was played in round 10 in the Tata Steel tournament 2011, and Carlsen was fighting for first place. He was really looking to win this game, or try to win at any rate. He was lagging a little bit behind, but he was in contention. Nepo wasn't doing so well. Anyway, that's the background. Let's see what happened. Carlsen with the white pieces, and he goes into an open Sicilian and takes on Nepo's Najdorf. And the Najdorf remains to this day really a major part of Nepo's repertoire. Whether we'll see it in the World Championship match, I don't know. But anyway, here it is. Carlsen plays bishop e2. The Karpov variation of Karpov following Geller really made this, turned bishop e2 into a very serious weapon. And now king h1 from Carlsen. Now this enjoyed a bit of a trend some time ago. So basically before bishop e3, White makes this move, king h1, which is it's kind of half waiting move, but half also preparing f4, so that, for example, if the bishop comes to e6, then f4, and you're trying to sort of gain a tempo with f5 and then bishop g5, doing it all in one go. This bishop move instead of bishop e3 and then bishop g5, and of course the king move is useful. That's one of the ideas, but it does look a little bit artificial, and well, knight c6 is just one of the methods that one can employ against king h1, and it is a very reliable move. Here Carlsen played f4, f3 has been played, but yeah, black should be fine there. Anyway, f4, let's continue with the game. This, I should say, is a really complex game, and it's typical open Sicilian, typical open Najdorf game. Let's see. So because White has already telegraphed that he wants to play f5 in some variations, then Nepo puts the bishop to b7. And there is potential pressure against the pawn on e4. a4 from Carlsen, trying to break up those pawns. And, well, Carlsen had already played this before. He'd managed to defeat Dominguez in 2010 with this variation, but e takes f4 is a good move. And knight e5. So this really makes sense of black's pieces. The knight is on a dream square on e5. It can't be dislodged by a pawn from that square. And now the bishop looks at the pawn on e4. There's pressure here, already black is looking to play b4 to actually potentially win this pawn. If pawn takes pawn, then, for example, bishop takes pawn, knight hits the rook, and black takes here, and knight takes pawn. And this is such a typical position you get from the Najdorf, where that bishop has managed to knock out the pawn on e4 and looks right through the middle to the king on h1. And these pawns on the queen side are not going anywhere for a long time. In the meantime, black's king is completely safe, and black has all the chances in this kind of position. In practical terms, that is a really nice position for black to play. That's why I love playing the Najdorf so much. With simple moves, sometimes the position just turns and you have this wonderful initiative against your opponent's king. Carlsen played queen d4, protecting the e-pawn. The knight hit the queen came back, and the knight came back again. So this is basically a tacit draw offer. And this was the game continuation. So if Carlsen wants to draw, he can just play queen d4 and knight c6. It's a draw by repetition, but Carlsen wanted more. He took on b5. And now he played rook e1. Now there are alternatives there. Nepo indicates that he thinks rook d1 is about equal, but let's look at rook e1. Let's have a look. This is very interesting. Nepo thinks that Carlsen basically made, when he played this, basically made an oversight in about 6 moves time. Let's have a look at what happened. So knight g6, the rook comes back, b4, hitting the knight comes to d5. Now Nepo says that he could have just played like this, and he feels this is a very solid way for black to play, but maybe difficult to achieve anything more. But he took on e4. Now, he spotted something in this variation. So, knight takes, queen takes. Now, you can see how Carlsen might have been tempted to go for this, because with a rook on e1, there's potential against the queen here. This queen looking quite nice on b4. You know, white's pieces look very well coordinated here, but watch what happens. Knight h4. So there is a potential hit on g2. So Carlsen plays bishop f3. Knight takes, pawn takes. And now, Carlsen must have reached this position way back when he played rook e1, because it looks nice for white. If knight f6, bishop g5 hits the queen. There's nice pressure here, pressure here. Looks great for white. But here is where Nepo had discovered something way back when he looked at knight takes e4. Queen d7. As Nepo says, Magnus obviously overlooked this move when playing rook e1. This is such a clever idea. So what happens if pawn takes knight, rook a4? What a beautiful idea. Slicing through here to the e-pawn, bishop takes pawn check, and suddenly white's king is actually going to be mated after queen g4 and queen g2. So this is a wonderful idea. Very subtle. Carlsen fights though. Bishop f4. By the way, if king g1 here, rook a4 anyway, watch what happens. Bishop a6. And a really nice move, f5. This is a variation indicated by Nepo. And suddenly the king is just being cut to shreds again. So Carlsen played bishop f4. Rook a4 anyway. And here Nepo had a long think. He said he looked at some crazy stuff with g5, but in the end he decided on this move. And this is kind of a very practical move. So white's king is obviously in trouble here. So Carlsen grabs that pawn, and now queen g4, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn on f3. Nice to use that pin. Knight d4. Rook takes, queen takes, bishop f3 check. So this is a forcing continuation. And Here, check. And queen c8. So after that flurry of tactics and exchanges, the position has simplified. And it's now stable again. And again, we have, to my eyes, a very typical position from these often very complicated Sicilians. But it's boiled down to a position where Black's king is completely safe behind that barricade of 3 pawns, whereas White's king just has 1 pawn in front of it and is quite open along this diagonal and along the second rank as well. These pawns are just not going anywhere for a very long time. If the queens are off, well, it might be a different story. But with the queens on, that is a very difficult position for White to play. So here's how things went. Queen f2. Queen b7. King g1. King's in check. Now, careful about taking too early. Queen takes here. Bishop e5 hits the queen and knight. So knight e4. Rook e8. So that knight is now secured in the middle of the board. This is the problem if you don't have pawns, let's say here. You know, that knight cannot be driven away. It's just a complete monster in the middle of the board. And here Nepo has a very simple idea. h6. So just securing a nice square, safe square for the king on h7. So that means he can now move his rook up and swing across to the king's side to attack the king. King h2. He played f5 and he said that's inaccurate. He should have played king h7 first and just continue on with this plan of f5 and rook g6. And here, I mean, he wants to do the same thing, but here Carlsen should have played queen c4, which just slows Black down for a moment. And basically here Carlsen would have to go for an endgame. And Black is definitely still better here. It's going to be very difficult to advance those queenside pawns. Black's pawns are quicker. You know, you can play moves like f4, king f5, or maybe activate the rook first. But that's still problematic. Carlsen pushed with b4, and now Black is on track again. King h7. Rook g6. That's a very simple plan by Nepo. So the knight is completely secure, the rook is in a great position, and now it's time to activate the queen. Queen b5. Rook e1. And here Nepo played rook c6. He criticised that move. He says queen a6 is best, and White is in a kind of Zugzwang position. It's really interesting. Let's just have a look. So, for example, if queen e3, then rook c6. If rook e2, then rook c3. You know, Black is invading here. I mean, well, White is just lost here, actually. Or if queen d3, queen b6, the queen threatens to come in. Rook e2, rook c3 again, queen g6, knight g5. You can see that White's position is just kind of falling apart here, actually. In any case, rook c6, well, Nepo says it's inaccurate, but it's still pretty good. You know, Black has all the play here. Basically, Carlsen sacked the exchange back. Nepo felt he shouldn't have allowed this, because he has to play quite accurately here. You know, this pin is very annoying. Queen d7. So he comments that the main thing is not to allow the queen to anchor on d3 here. h4, h5. Nepo feels that the best move here is queen f3, and then, well, black plays this endgame. It should be winning, but you know, there with these two connected passed pawns, you know, white still has a chance of trying to bring the king over. Anyway, should be winning. But c4 played by Carlsen, and now it really is over. And well, the queens are going to come off any moment. You know, black is slowly going to invade. Let's just see to the end of the game. So mate threatened here. Now careful of this. Well, all kinds of things going on. Queen e5. Queens get swapped off. And this one is pretty easy. This pawn is going to drop. So here Carlsen resigned. Even if the pawn had remained on h4, basically black is winning, because you put the king here. You know, you can even bring the rook round to take here, because the pawn is on g7. You always have tempo moves to win the opposition. So yeah, this ending is completely winning here. Carlsen resigned. So that was the first game that Carlsen and Nepo played. First classical game that they played as adults, and a convincing victory for Nepo. And once again, we see, you know, his sharp play. Excuse me a second. His sharp tactical play, and the key move here was this move, Queen d7. What a beautiful idea, with the idea of rook a4, which he'd foreseen, Carlsen hadn't, and it resulted in this typical Najdorf position where white's king is in trouble. And after that, okay, there are a few inaccuracies, but I think beautifully played by Nepo. So in the tournament, I should say that Carlsen actually came equal third with 8 points. Nakamura won with 9 out of 13. That's Anand second, 8.5. Carlsen with 8. And actually Nepo was quite a way behind with 6 out of 13. He came 9th. So although Nepo won their individual game, at this point Nepo was lagging a bit behind. So there's going to be more coming soon. I've got loads of games to show you in this series, but I think, you know, a really intriguing clash of styles shown in that game.